What's up guys, CodefForge here, welcome to the next video. Today we will be creating one-to-one relationship using JPA. As always, we will start with the project setup. We are on the Spring initializer page, and over here we have to add some dependencies. So we will need the JPA for the mapping, and also we will use H2 database engine as the in-memory database. And also we'll use Spring Web. We need Spring Web to access H2 console of our in-memory database, otherwise our application will not start on the port 8080 and we will be not able to access it. And also our application will not close instantly when we have Spring Web. Okay, so I think it is all good. We can generate the project and open it in the IDE. Project is imported, so we can open it up. We go to the source, main, resources, and we want to open application properties. Over here I will paste some configuration from the previous video. If you don't know what is going on over here, you can check out my video about the H2 database setup. But we can quickly go through this. So here we are defining the port, it's 8080 by default also. And here we are enabling the H2 console, and also we are specifying the path where this console is available. Here we have the database connection, and over here we are defining the username and the password. And here at the bottom we are defining some JPA related stuff like showing the SQL in the console, formatting this SQL, and after each start of the application we want to create everything from the scratch. Now to create one-to-one relationship we will need entities. So let's go to the Java, our main package, and we want to create a new package over here, and it will be called model. Okay, and inside we will need two classes. The first one will be car, and the second one will be owner. Now let's take care of those classes. So we'll start with the owner class. And first of all, we have to annotate it with the entity annotation. And also we'll make this code bigger. And the second thing we want to do is to specify the table name. And we'll use for it table annotation. Have to import it, and the name will be owner. Our owner, of course, needs the primary key. So to create the primary key, we'll have to use the ID annotation. And also we will specify the generation strategy. And to do this, we'll use the generated value. And we'll set the strategy property to the generation type auto. And now we have to specify the property itself. So we'll say private. It will be the type of long, and it will be called ID. Our owner will also have name, so we'll go here, we'll say private string, and we will say name. And now, since we want to create a one-to-one relationship with the car entity, we have to create additional property, and it will be private. The type will be car and the name will be the car. Our owner entity is not done yet, but we will come back to it later. Now let's move on to the car entity. So like before, we want to annotate it with the entity. And also we want to specify the name of the table, and it will be car. Our car will also have primary key, so we want to say ID, and also generated value with the strategy set to generation type auto. And the primary key will be private long ID. Our car entity will also have the model name, so we'll say private string model. We will create bidirectional one-to-one relationship, and to achieve that we have to say private owner. It is called bidirectional one-to-one relationship because in the car entity we have a reference to the owner entity, and in the owner entity we have the reference to the car entity. Now we have to annotate these references with the proper annotations. So let's go back to the car entity, and over here at the owner property we want to add the one-to-one annotation. We will also specify the optional attribute of the one-to-one annotation, and it is called mapped by. And as the value, we'll pass the name of the field which owns the relationship. And in our case, it will be car. And we are passing car over here because in our owning side, we have defined the car property over here. And since this field, this property named car is the owning side, we also have to annotate it with the one-to-one annotation. We also want to add the join column annotation to our owning side. And this is because we want to specify the name of the column where the foreign key will be stored. And in our case it will be car ID. And also we want to specify the referenced column name, and we want to reference the column name ID from the car entity. So we are referencing ID from the car entity, so this is over here. Now let's start our application to check if our tables will be correctly created. So we open the Maven, huge, and now we go to the plugin Spring Boot Run. And after a few seconds it should be up. And we want to go to the web browser and open up the H2 console. Our H2 console is available on the localhost port 8080 and the path is /h2. I have already opened it in the web browser. We can log in and we can see that we have two tables, car and the owner. If we open the owner table, which is the owning side of our one-to-one relationship, we can see that we have over here the car ID column, which stores foreign key, and this foreign key comes from the car table ID column. And this owner table is called the owning side because in this table we are storing the information. Over here we are storing the foreign key, right? It's good. We can close this up, stop the application and hide this stuff. Now we can go back to our entities and adjust them a little bit. For sure we will need the default constructor because it is required by the Hibernate. So let's generate one. I will select constructor and we want the default one, so it will be empty. And also we'll overload this constructor because we will need the one with the model. And this is good. We can go to the owner. Here is the same. So first of all, we will generate the default constructor. So we select none. Also, we will need the overloaded constructor with the name. And this is the one which we will use to create an object. And it will be also nice to set a car later, or we can also do it in the constructor, but we'll create a setter. Okay, that's good. To persist our entities in the database, we will also need repositories. So in our main package, we'll create a new package and it will be called repository. And over here, we will have two interfaces. So we select new class, change to the interface, and the first one will be car repository. And the second one will be owner repository. It will be pretty quick, so we want our interface to extend CRUD repository, and it is generic type, and we want it for our owner entity, and the primary key in our owner entity is the type of long. So now we can go to the car repository. Same story here, so we want to say extends CRUD repository, and it is generic type, so we want to say car, because this one will be for the car entity, and the primary key is also the type of long. It is also nice to annotate repositories with the repository annotation, so let's add one here and also one here on the owner repository. Now we can go to the main class over here. And now we will create some objects and persist them into the database to test if our bidirectional one-to-one relationship is working correctly. First of all, we will retrieve the repository beans from the context, and we can do it this way. So we will create a new object, which will be the type of configurable application context with the same name. And we will store over here the value returned from the run method. So this is how we want to access the context. And now we want to retrieve the beans. So first of all, we'll create an object to store the reference, and we'll have the car repository, and the name will be the same. And from the configurable application context, we can use the getBean method. And inside we can provide the name of the class which we want to use. And in the case of the car repository, it will be car repository.class. And same story here for the owner repository. So we are creating a new object and we will store inside the value returned from the getBean method. So we say getBean and it will be owner repository.class. And this is all good. We have the repositories. Now we can create our entities. So the first one will be the car, and let's call it also car. We have to import the type, and over here we want to say new car. And we want to use the constructor which we have defined. And we have to pass the model. And it will be M200, let's say. And right now we can use our car repository and save it in the table with the name car by passing our car object. And this data will be already persisted. Now we want to create an owner for this car. So we say owner, and let's say it will have the same name, and we'll use the constructor which we have created. So we have to pass the name of the owner, and we'll call him John Doe. And now we can assign the car to this owner by saying owner set car. We'll use the setter which we have created, and we can pass the car object which we have created in the previous steps over here. And now all we have to do is to use the owner repository and save our owner into the database, like this. Let's test it out. So we go to the Maven, Spring Boot run, and we'll open the web browser. Okay, application is up. So we go to the H2 console, we can log in, and we have two tables like before. Let's check out the car table first. We select run, and we can see that the model M200 has been saved correctly. And now in the owner table, we select run, we can see that our owner is here with the name John Doe and ID 2, but also in the column car ID we are storing the ID of the car, which is set to 1, and it is correct because in the car our car has the ID 1. So our one-to-one relationship is working, but how to test out if our relationship is bidirectional? So to do it, we'll have to close it and go back to our main method. So now we will retrieve our entities from the database, and we'll check out if the object references are set correctly. So John Doe should own the M200 car, and M200 car should be assigned to the John Doe owner. We will display those information in the console, so we'll need the getters for the car and the owner entity. So in the car entity, we want the getters for the model and the owner to display some data. And the same goes for the owner. So here we want the getters for the name and for the car. We can go back to the main. We will now retrieve our entities, and we'll have to use the optional to do this. So first one will be car, and it will be optional car. And now using the car repository, we can use the find by ID method. And we know that car will have ID 1, so we pass 1. And the same goes for the owner, so we say optional owner, and it will be optional owner. And now we want to use the owner repository, and same story over here, so we say find by ID, and we know that the owner will have the ID 2. Now we want to check if the entities are present, so we want to say if, and inside we'll say optional car is present, and we will use the logical AND operator. And now optional owner is present, and if it's true, we want to log some stuff. So let's create a logger. It will be private static final logger, and it will be this one. We'll call it log, and it will be logger factory get logger for the JPA one-to-one application class. So now we can log some stuff to the console. To do it, we'll say log info, and we'll start with the car. So we want to say optional car, and we want to call the get method to get the value from the optional. And now we will say is owned by, and we'll display the owner assigned to this car. So we want to say optional car get, and now we want to get owner of this car. And now we'll do the same for the owner. So we say log info again, but this time we'll say optional owner. We want to say get to get the value from the optional. And now we'll say has a car. And now using optional owner, we want to get the car assigned to this owner. So we say get car. Right now we are trying to display object over here, and in the console we will receive the object ID instead of the properties with the values. And to change it, we will have to override the toString method in our entities. So we go to the car, and over here we want to use override toString method, and we want to override it only for the ID and the model in the case of the car, and in the case of owner we want to override the toString method only for the ID and the name. If we would override it also for the car reference type in the owner and for the owner in the car, we'll get some recursion error. So this is why we're skipping this property. Okay, so now we can go back to the main method. And we can start our application. So we go to the Maven Spring Boot Run. After a few seconds should be up. And also we should see our logs in the console. Okay, here they are. So we can see that the car with the ID1 model M200 is owned by the owner with the ID2 John Doe. And the same goes for the owner side. So owner with the ID2 named John Doe has a car with the ID1 and model M200. So this is basically how you want to create a bidirectional one-to-one mapping using JPA and Hibernate. And this is all for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and remember about liking the video and subscribing to the channel. See you next time.